So I'm joined now by artist Mella Shaw. Hello, Mella.
Hello.
Hello. Could you tell us a little bit about the exhibition Breaking Point that's coming to the museum this summer?
Yeah, great. Thank you for inviting me. The exhibition is called Breaking Point: Fragility in Clay and Nature. And I think it opens on the 8th of July and runs until the 3rd of October. Basically, we've brought together three artists for this exhibition: myself and Elspeth Owen and Jayne Ivimey. Elspeth's piece is called Making Do, and her work is very much about a direct response to this idea of the fragility of the earth and also the fragility of clay as a material, and particularly fired ceramics. So she's responding to an elephant bird's egg that was actually collected by Sir David Attenborough when he was a young man, and he found all these shards and then he pieced them back together into this perfect egg. So we've borrowed that object because it's in his private collection, which is lovely, and shown alongside that, Elspeth's work is sort of small fragments of broken shards, which will be
Mhm.
scattered through the museum, and her own version of the egg. So it's very much drawing attention to this idea of how things can be salvaged and put back together, and particularly at this point of climate crisis, it's a really actually quite an optimistic and hopeful piece, which is lovely. And then we've got Jayne Ivimey, whose work is drawing attention to the number of British birds on the endangered red list, the red list of endangered species. And her work is extremely moving. Basically, the species on that red list, they've had at least 50% of their breeding populations decline. So it's a very sad and poignant piece. And we'll be showing that alongside actual bird skins from the collection as well. Really just to say that the whole concept of the exhibition was to get to show our ceramic pieces that are drawing attention to these issues, but within the zoology collection and the amazing kind of specimens that are there, and to kind of revitalize these conversations, I suppose, because of those two sitting next to each other. So then I'm showing two bodies of work. Um, the one I'll talk most to you about, and I think you probably have more questions about, is Harvest. But before I mention that, I'll just mention the other body, which is called Janus forms. So there's a series of forms, and this is an example of one. They are made, the god Janus obviously had two faces, one looking to the past and one looking to the future. So again, these are sort of seen to be representing ecosystems because they're in perfect balance. But they also kind of represent, again, this moment of time that we're in, where we're in this key point of transition from the past to the future, and how we're actually going to have to deal with this and start taking notice of the environmental moment in time. So Harvest is quite a large scale ceramic installation that I started making in 2017. I read a statistic from the Ellen MacArthur Foundation that by 2050 there'll be a greater weight of plastic in the ocean than fish. And reading that statistic is obviously absolutely horrifying. I think we've all become a bit, more used to those kind of very dramatic statistics now. But when I first read that, I just couldn't believe it. I was like, can that really be true? And one of the reasons I felt that was because it's a statistic based on weight, not volume. And obviously everybody knows that, the weight of a fish is much more than the weight of plastic. So I decided to literally make that statistic kind of physical so that people could see it and hopefully have a more emotional, dramatic response to it. So what I did was I made a huge number of ceramic fish and ceramic examples of plastic. So this is one of the examples of this is slip cast ceramic, so it's quite light. And this is an example of the fish. So the fish have also been smoke fired, but I made literally hundreds of these. And the idea is, if you hold one of the plastic containers in your hand and you hold the fish in the other hand, the fish is much heavier. It's been made in a different way, but the fish is roughly represents how the weight of an average sort of herring size fish. And this is roughly, it's slightly heavier, but it's basically the weight of plastic. So it meant that I made an enormous amount more of the ceramic plastic. And so when you see the installation, it is quite dramatic as a representation of that statistic.
Numbers are always so huge that it feels a bit mind-boggling, and having work like this is so important to put it in context really for us so that we can get a bit of a grip, try and get a bit of a grip about it.
But it was very much for me, and I think for the other two artists as well, we're very interested in connecting through art to an emotional response that people have about these statistics and these very scientific information that we're given, but trying to make it a bit more approachable and understandable. And also to connect people in a very personal way to it, so that they feel that they are actually, they have some personal autonomy and can do something about it. So for me, I've only got two examples here, but I made about 32 different molds. But the idea was that these are very recognized, like we can tell this is a very obvious milk bottle, and I've got spray guns and all the kind of obvious things that we all use around the house. So you feel actually quite personally connected because these are objects that you use every day.
Over the last kind of year and a half, as we've been going through such challenging times, I don't know about you, I feel like these issues, they feel like they've dropped off the agenda somewhat. There have been so many big topics that we've had to engage with. Do you think it's our relationship with single-use plastics has changed?
Yeah, I think unfortunately and inevitably it has, because of the kind of medical crisis that we've been in. And it's actually quite interesting because this exhibition was planned for a year ago, and obviously we had to postpone it by a full year. And in a way, it has brought my installation, the harvest piece, kind of back more into the focal point, because I think a lot of people are beginning to realize that actually we need to get back to thinking more environmentally about single-use PPE, particularly, obviously, has become a big issue. And I mean, it is very distressing. I think anecdotally, everybody has seen a lot of disposable masks and plastic gloves left all over the place. And the problem is that no matter how they're disposed, ultimately they will end up in the oceans because of the way landfill doesn't work, basically. So it is distressing, and I think that what's wonderful is a lot of people are very frustrated by this, and hopefully that will push the issue back up the agenda, really. But yeah, it's definitely a worrying time right now for lots of reasons. And I mean, obviously the main, I think there is so much that needs to be done in terms of plastic pollution, and a main way of doing that is to put pressure on businesses and companies and supermarkets and all of that, and we can all do that in our own small way.
Yeah, I think it's a really important point you make as well about, even though it seems like such a huge issue, individually we can make a difference. And I think that's a really important message as well. So thank you for that.